Who's that playing?
Nice hair.
I like it. I don't. You have so many different ways of being. I like the wizard. The wizard version is my favorite, but this is my second favorite.
Yeah, the beard became the beard started wearing me when it reached about, I think it was at like somewhere between 12 to 14 inches.
Oh my god!
And I plus I was heading. It was coming up to Christmas, and nobody,
you can't have a white beard during Christmas. It's just not happening.
All right, guys, hold on 1 second here. All right, we'll do a little intro here.
Touching.
As this episode of Simple Blasphemy is loading, it is brought to you by our Patreons. Keep us commercial free and join our Patreon today. Patreon.com/simpleblasphemy. Check out our website, simpleblasphemy.com.
Yes. Remember, people, drive safely and have loads of hot, nasty stuff.
It's too late now. This is Simple Blasphemy.
All right.
Well, there you go.
That's it. Welcome to Simple Blasphemy Podcast, all you blasphemers out there. Yeah, my name is Zach Ward, and I have here with me always Andy's
Stinky weather fat, shaky hands, dopey morning duck, grumpy gnomes.
Oh boy.
Lovely. I like it.
And also Mr. Green.
One dot top roll.
All right. And before we introduce our special guest that needs no introduction, I guess,
Not at all.
All the info on this show, including episodes and guests, can be found at simpleblasphemy.com. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And this week, well, actually, this is our second time this week.
Yeah, we're busy.
Special guest is Reeves Gabrels. How are you doing today, Reeves?
Oh man,
I can do this and fade to black.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I like this. This is really nice because usually when we are in the presence of Reeves, there's mayhem, chaos, and always so much going on.
We get Reeves to ourselves.
Yeah. So us here at Simple Blasphemy are three friends that get together and kind of just have some fun. This is our bowling league, and I don't know.
The podcast.
We get to have Reeves.
You could join a band.
Man, I miss playing out so bad. Do you miss playing? Does everybody here miss playing in some fashion?
Yes.
No.
Oh my God.
My bank account misses it.
Shut up, Green. You don't play out. You won't join my band.
Zach Green is the best guitar player out of us three, and he doesn't.
No, I'm not.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
I would like to hear Reeves and Zach Green have not like a battle, but like a collaboration.
A conversation.
Ooh. A 6-string conversation starring Zach Green and Reeves Gabrels.
A lover's quarrel.
Ooh. Dear Lord.
Possibly.
All right. So, Reeves, in case people are tuning in and they're not exactly familiar, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh.
Lots of words.
Just, you know what? Just go to Wikipedia and leave me alone.
Do a wiki search.
Best answer.
Let's just dive into this and have some fun and get to know Reeves even better than we have been the pleasure of having known him. So here we go. Question number 1. Looking back,
do I get a buzzer that I hit so I can, like, for the answer?
Just
Like-
Yeah.
backhand the microphone as hard as you can. I want you to peek
For
everything.
$200, I'll take no.
Yes. History for $200, Alex. Reeves, take us back to the beginning of your journey. Tugboats, Staten Island, comic books, and music. How did this all start?
Well, the music part of it started. I was always, I mean, my father could play kind of fake his way around the piano. I mean, he could play 3 chords, and and he had figured out at one point how to play like a G major, but then play an E in the bass. So then it became an E minor. So he get around major and minor, but with the same 3 chords. And he would just kind of sing and bullshit his way through it. And we didn't have a piano, so it would always be somebody else's house or a bar that, you know, it was a very Staten Island in the 60s when I was like, I remember going to bars when I was with my dad, who worked on the tugboats and would be home for a week and away for a week. And he worked for McAllister. If you see red tugboats with a double white stripe around it, like the tugboats that docked the Mercy, I think it was the Mercy, the hospital ship a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
They were McAllister tugs. Anyway, so, you know, I was a kid. He'd be home. When he was home 24/7 for a week at a time. So, you know, we'd be doing something like cutting the grass, and we'd have to go get gas for the lawnmower. And that meant we would stop at the bar, you know, at the local bar. And then that's how I learned how to play pool. And that's how I developed a taste for cashews and Coca-Cola.
That's
And-
that's a unique.
And
That's
it-
very unique.
And then, you know, and that whole time of my life was always, he liked both kinds of music. He liked country and Western, to quote
Blues Brothers.
And actually, I knew it as a Buddy Rich quote. And my mom was big into whatever was top 40, and she started with, you know, the Dorsey Brothers, and went through the Platters and the Coasters, and, you know, Frank Sinatra and Elvis. And then the Beatles came along. She was the first person that played me the Beatles. And I remember being in the car. She was driving me to school, and she asked me what I thought of "Love Me Do" was on the radio.
Oh boy.
And you know, she was describing their haircuts and everything to me, and she was probably in her 20s at that point. So it was, you know, not probably more the music of her generation than mine, and you know, so all that was always around me. And I remember being moved by, you know, I really liked the Coasters and the Platters.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff, and that stuff all resonated for me. And my father, you know, he was big into George Jones and Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash. And the exception to that was he liked Elvis, but he really liked Tom Jones when Tom Jones came along.
So do I.
And you know, but
It's not unusual.
so no, it isn't at all. I'll just play along with you on that one.
Right.
But
Obvious, Dad.
But anyway, he when I was 13, I started about 13 or it was the year I was 13 or 14. So I was first year of high school. And I was always like this egghead kid and I wanted to go back to go to the comic book thing. I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I would listen to the radio while I was drawing. And I would come home from school and I would do my homework as soon as I got home from school, so I didn't have to think about any of that shit.
Yep.
So it didn't harsh my vibe.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that's what I used to do.
And it was I thought schoolwork was easy. I was bored in school, and I viewed it as an intrusion, you know. Plus it was Catholic school.
Oh yeah,
which my parents lied to get me in, even though they weren't married in a Catholic church, because my father wasn't
This dude's a Protestant.
And yeah, and he was, and so all that stuff. He thought I was coming home, and I would do my schoolwork about a half an hour, and then I would start drawing. And he thought I was at my desk, and he had built me an angled, like an architect's desk, so I could for drawing and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And he
Drafting
out of what do you call it? Wood paneling, like the press board wood paneling that you would see in mobile homes.
lines.
That kind of, yeah, and which we had to get me a blotter, otherwise I couldn't draw a straight line because of the ridges. Anyway, I digress. The thing was, he talked me into taking guitar lessons because I thought I was too serious about my schoolwork. Because he thought I was in there for hours and hours doing schoolwork, when in fact I was drawing, superheroes and naked women.
Now, were you doodling, or were you like doing like complete pieces of art? Was it on the margins of the paper, or?
Well, no, I had sketchbooks and stuff, and
Do you still have them?
Yeah, some of them, and but not from so much from my formative years. They're more from high school, and well, I guess those are formative years too. But
we're allowed to judge our art and discard it as necessary.
Anyway, at 13, he talked me into taking guitar lessons from a friend of his named Turk Van Lake. Turk Van Lake had played with Benny Goodman, and he used to play with Paul Anka and Frank Sinatra, I believe. Wow. But nobody believed Turk because he looked like the remember Secret Squirrel's sidekick?
The Morocco Mole.
He looked like Morocco Mole.
Morocco Mole.
And he used to hang out at the bar that my father went to, and called the Silver Fox on Staten Island. And he taught guitar at a local music store. And I just, I was kind of like, I don't know, I'm too old to start playing guitar now. All my friends have been playing since they were 10, and they're all good, and I'm going to suck, and And then I had gotten the flu pretty badly, and I went back to school on a Monday, and the school I was in, the all boys Catholic high school, you were responsible for anything you missed. And I wasn't used to not getting good grades and not getting them easily. And the day I got back, there were 2 tests, and I got a D in one and an F in the other because it was all on the previous week, and I hadn't done anything because I'd had the flu. And so my father could see I was bummed out. He said, "Look, you need to do something other than schoolwork."
What a dude. Seriously, what a dude for a father to look at you and be like, you know what? You kid are overworked. You need to do something that's not.
But but the truth of the matter was I actually wasn't. I was,
but at the same time, that his
perspective on it.
His perspective on it was that you were working too hard, which is seriously, that's still good dad stuff. That's still really good.
I have a good question then. Because you have dabbled in artwork, have we ever seen any of your drawings like on albums or anything like that? Or... No. I went in high school. We ended up moving to upstate to Bethel, New York. After my first year of high school, my parents decided they wanted to buy some land and move upstate, and they thought maybe I was really into the school I was in. They didn't know. And my father said, we're thinking we'd like to move, but how do you feel about that? And I just said, can I get a motorcycle? And he said, sure, and a snowmobile. And I was like, let's fucking go. And so we moved upstate, and basically, I had taken guitar lessons for a year. Turk said, I've taught you to read the notes on the staff. I've taught you a bunch of chords. Now it's just up to you and your ears and listening to records. And, maybe you'll find a teacher up there, maybe you won't. So that was and the thing is, we were out in the farmland. So in the summertime, I had the motorcycle, but you can't ride the motorcycle all the time. In the wintertime, I had the snowmobile.
but it's fucking cold and you can't ride the snowmobile all the time.
Yeah, you
So
can't
when
dig grass.
when I wasn't doing that, I played guitar along with, and remember Record Club of America?
Mm-hmm.
You'd send a penny in and
Oh,
they'd
yeah.
send you
Oh, yeah,
12
yeah.
records.
Oh yeah.
I was more.
Well-
I was in the 25 cent or 50 cent tier.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking 1971 now. So, So anyway, I got 12 records, and then my mother, all the records came. She didn't know I sent it in, and she was like, "Well, now you got to buy one record every month from these people, and you're not even legal age. They can't hold you to this." So she wrote them a letter and got me out of the thing, out of the contract. But I got to keep the records. But I mean, to this day, it was like Humble Pie, Humble Pie, Free. Who else? 10 Years After, Steppenwolf. I mean, that was, what that's what, and that to this day, it's kind of the core. I mean, it's still the stuff I like.
Okay, so what you're talking about is you started playing guitar with these things. So when you got bigger and better and faster, you started to rebel against the legacy guitar brands, right? Like, so no,
Okay,
that's
so
the thing is,
I
like, you
took
had
too
your
long the
big
first
guy.
answer, right?
Yeah, but like you had the two big guys, and you were like, you know what, I like Parker.
Well, well, to put it in time, when I was in high school, I bought a Telecaster. I bought a Harmony. I'd sold a bunch of my toys, and I bought a Harmony acoustic and a cassette recorder when I was still in freshman year of high school on Staten Island. We moved up north, and in sophomore year, I saved up enough money to buy a Telecaster.
Mm-hmm.
And in a year and a half, 2 years later, I sold the Telecaster, which was kind of sweet because my grandmother had to sew me a gig bag because I couldn't afford a case. So she made a gig bag out of old jeans, old dungarees.
Probably the best gig bag ever.
And she bought me a Silvertone 112 Silvertone amp for Christmas, which I just got back. The guy that I loaned it to in 1974 brought it to a gig I did at the Cutting Room in New York. Richie Vesciano, who was the singer in the band I was in first year of college.
Holy crap.
I loaned the amp to him, and he held on to it for what, like 45 years or something, 42 years.
Long enough to where it's pretty either impressive or scary.
Well, it sounds great. I finally I had it, and I was afraid to plug it in because I didn't, it'd been sitting in his attic for all those years, and it sounds awesome. It's a Sears Silvertone amp.
Wow.
And
let me ask you this while we're on that subject of your your high school, college, all that time, all these bands in between. Were you primarily always a lead guitar player, a singer, a rhythm person? Like, what was your early role?
well, it was easier to figure out the single note stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the way I went. Plus, I had the image of that time, was, I was buying like Circus magazine and Cream magazine. So it was, foot on the monitor. Well, they didn't have, half the time they didn't have monitors then, but it was, I remember, I'll never forget the picture of Clapton. It was his shadow at Madison Square Garden. And it was just his figure, the shadow against the Marshall behind him, and the coily cable going from the Marshall head to the guitar without touching the ground, which is like, so the romantic part of that was there. So I went from a Telecaster in sophomore year to Les Paul Gold Top Deluxe in the beginning of my my senior year. And then by the end of my senior year, I had the replacement pickup thing had just started to happen, and DiMarzio was on Staten Island in a basement.
Oh.
And the day I was there, I brought my guitar in. I wanted to have 2 super distortions put in it. Cream super distortion. And the guy that designed the logo with the looked like the sun, the original DiMarzio, it was his landlord who lived upstairs from him, and he brought it down. And plus, if you had to pee while you were there, they would let you come around behind the counter, and you have to stand on a stool and pee in the sink. you know. And
Well-
Steve Blucher was there. All those guys. You know?
This sounds like my bottom floor at my house when I talk to the kids.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the bars we were in high school.
You know what? Just pee into the trough back there.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
bathroom back there. Just piss in the trough. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, but the thing about it, is so first that brings me up to first year of college. So the whole art school thing. I went to Parsons School of Design because I didn't think I wasn't a good enough guitar player, and everybody that I knew was telling me I was much better at art than I was in music. And so I went to Parsons School of Design, and I moved into the attic of a house next to the house I grew up in on Staten Island. So I'd wake up in the morning, look out the window and look into my old backyard and look at my house, which was kind of funny. But we were good friends with our old next door neighbors. So it was kind of like being home without having, the authority figure of a parent.
So when you say you're going to you went to the School of Design, now was that more for an artistic or more for like an engineering design kind of?
It was I was in their communication design program, which was basically it was kind of like teaching you to be an art director. Everybody in the class wanted to grow up and be the art director for Andy Warhol's interview.
And that's the way. If you really want to make money doing art, being an art director is the way to do it.
And of course, after a year there, I decided I didn't like that, and I switched to illustration and went to School of Visual Arts. But and in the meantime,
I didn't know this about you, Reeves.
And then
same ilk, amazing.
And then while I was at School of Visual Arts, I started taking. I took an elective with a guy named Lou Stallman, who wrote "It's Gonna Take a Miracle" and a bunch of songs for Perry Como and Wilson Pickett, and he was part of the Brill Building, like Carole King and Jerry Goffin and all those people. And so I went to the Brill Building a bunch of times because of him. But he would give us song titles and say, write a song around this lyric idea, write a chorus, and then eventually became write a song and come in and play it for the class. And I was too shy to play it for them, but I had a friend who had an open reel Tascam 4-track in his basement. So I would do like a 4-track version, and he would play drums, and then I would basically do a little production. And he said one day, he goes, "Are you playing guitar on this stuff?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "You want to cut your classes this afternoon and do a session?" And so I started doing sessions for him, and they were just demo sessions and stuff. And then I had gotten into fusion.
Wait a minute, this is where everything takes a really weird turn.
And
then I got into jazz fusion.
Yeah, and then I had seen Billy Duke. Billy Cobham and George Duke's band with John Schofield and Alphonso Johnson, and just New York was a great place to be at that point before fusion calcified and became a genre. It's like everything. It's just like electronic. Like before they coined the phrase electronica in the 90s, electronic music was really happening. Wow. But then it became a thing, just like what they did to punk, just like what critics do to everything.
I think that you look at like stuff like, and rest in peace, what was the guy from Kraftwerk passed away recently. Mm-hmm. And I was really disappointed. Not that this whole ordeal that everybody's going through right now wasn't going to put a damper on that to begin with. Yeah. But I really wanted to see them up in Detroit in July. I was super excited. I was going to buy tickets. I was like, this is going to be amazing. And then now it's double not going to happen.
Yeah,
which
David.
I feel...
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
David and I saw them in Germany in 96, I think 95 maybe it was, when they'd gotten back together. They hadn't been touring much. And at the end of the show, they had those automaton versions of themselves. Yep. And so they went off stage, came back out to do the encore, and we're, listening to it. And then all of a sudden, one of the road crew comes out and takes the arm off one, and then takes the head off another. And we thought it was them. It was a really good.
What a fucking amazing prestige for a show. How are you going to fucking end a show? That's how you're going to end a show. I'm taking the band apart.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you're gonna fool David Bowie and Reeves Gabrels that are there just to hang out, good job.
This is a great segue to go into a little bit of that. We have
Yeah.
the Tin Machine years.
It looks like the guy on the guy on the cross looks like your logo guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
It looks like you've had enough in this particular picture.
I think we'd all had enough at that point. If you look at everybody, we're all like, "Oh, fuck this." We were in Ireland.
Block walls.
We had been rehearsing in Ireland for 2 weeks for the tour for the second tour, and we were all over it at that point.
Hey, Reeves, let me ask you this. Some of these questions tonight are really coming from us being musicians, and
this is our chance to be able to talk to you about the things that we want to know.
I don't think the majority of people that practice guitar or they're trying to make a band happen and things like that really understand the full scope of something that does achieve success or at any level. And even when you look at Tin Machine and being jumped into that, how are you prepared to even deal with not just having to play guitar, but like this photo shoots and all this other stuff that,
hey, go to the front here, you go up there. It's fine.
Well, I had a good coach in David who basically treated me like a younger brother through most of it, and he was also very aware that everybody else was 5'7" with like a 28-inch waist. And at that time I had a 34-inch waist and I was 6 feet or 6'1", maybe even then. And, so I was either go to the back or go to the front, so that you don't make the rest of us look short and you don't look that much like I was out of scale.
Welcome to the graphic design position.
My army soldiers would not fit in my truck. And
is that the too big for your britches analogy that we're looking for?
Yeah, I showed up wearing cowboy boots one day and they had heels on them, and we got on, David and I got on an elevator that had mirrors inside, and he was standing in front of me and he looked me in the eye in the mirror and he said, "Don't ever wear those again." So then I got platform later on in our time together. I got those Buffalo platform sneakers with like the 4-inch heels during the Earthling tour. Anyway, so but in answer to your question, Zach, I started taking guitar lessons from Schofield. I took like 3 lessons from him in New York while I was from John Schofield. And really, I didn't know you won a Grammy.
More than once, and also nominated many times before that.
Really?
In jazz, yep.
But he said, for everything that you're asking me and everything you want to know, why don't you go up to Berkeley in Boston? Mm-hmm. And I took his advice and I saved up. I was working at the St. Mark's Cinema, which was on 2nd Avenue in St. Mark's Place, which is a whole other story, a whole other education. And I saved up like enough money that I could, and I had had a Regents scholarship in New York State, but I couldn't use that in Massachusetts. So I got a BEOG. They used to do the basic educational opportunity grant, because when I was a senior in high school, my father died in a car accident, and then we were basically pretty poor at that point. Mm-hmm. So I qualified for. I was getting, because he was a veteran, I was getting like $150 a month from the Veterans Administration, which paid for my rent in New York in a shared apartment, and left me another $50 left over. But I mean, that was after I moved out of the neighbor's house on Staten Island. But anyway, I scraped enough money together to go to Berkeley, and I did 6 semesters in 2 years. And then I was working too much up there, and I had a friend of mine and I had a 11-piece horn band, and we were
Holy
writing
fucking rubber band.
We were writing charts for it was like Don Ellis or Frank Zappa or something like that. So you had to, and you'd always have somebody like a French trumpet player, which a French screech trumpet player like Maynard Ferguson with a and
good approximation.
People blowing out their spit valve on carpeted floor in the rehearsal room. Like it was like a swamp in the horn section. But so in answer to your question, all of that stuff and what came after it, even in the Boston music scene, because after I got out of Berkeley, I stayed in Boston. I played the country circuit up there. I played weddings. 1986, I did 180 something weddings.
Wow.
In 1 year. And
I thought I'd done a lot of weddings.
Wow.
And I had done a lot of weddings, but that's a lot of weddings.
You could really, you could really cram them in on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But
3 meals.
And yeah, that too. And but all of this stuff became, and I had my own band, and we were trying to get a record deal, and we were doing all that, and we shared our rehearsal space was shared with Till Tuesday right before they got signed, because they were friends and all part. And I gave Amy guitar lessons, and the bass player in my band gave her bass lessons, and the singer went out with her. And so it was it was that whole it was a really vital to us scene, it seemed at the time in the 80s. And then my ex-wife was a hard news journalist, and she had done this. It was right after we got married, and she was gone for almost 6 months doing a series of articles on the exploitation of children in the developing world, and like child prostitutes, child soldiers, all this stuff. And then she got a call from a friend that worked for David that they were trying to put it. He was going to, in 1987, he was going to bring the Glass Spider tour to America. And would she be interested in doing press for that? And she was like, well, I don't really do that kind of thing, but and this was a friend of hers from college, and it was like, well, we just trying to pad the list, so can we use your name? And nice. She was like, sure. And can you send a resume? She goes, well, I don't have a resume, but I'll send the last bunch of articles I did. And she had got one like the Peabody Award and the Overseas Press Club Award, so she was heavy and is heavy in her field. And knowing David, as I came to know him, when he would much rather hire somebody to do press that he wanted to talk to, that was smart and interesting. Because half the time, if once you can do the job, you're really just sitting around. And if you got somebody who's interesting, then you've got someone to talk to while you're waiting for the plane.
That's right.
And so he interviewed her and hired her, and she went off to do press for David. And one of the things she said to him was, look, my husband, we haven't been married that long. I haven't seen him for about the last 6 months. So, can you, part of my deal, he needs to be able to come out and see me every couple of weeks. So they just gave her money towards tickets. So we figured it out so I could go out every week. And then David started asking, when's Reeves coming out? Because he thought I was a fine arts painter that knew something about music. And I wasn't going to say that I was a guitar player, because that was going to spoil the meal. It was like we'd hang. And the first time I met him, he was like, I had nothing to do. He was the man in charge, so he had nothing to do. I had an all-access pass. And he said, well, you want to come and hang out with me in my trailer? And we ended up watching Fantasy Island with the sound off, making up our own storyline.
Oh, my God. That's awesome.
And so I just thought, this is like, he was like all of my friends, because of the band I was in at the time, we all lived we lived above a liquor store and a convenience store in Watertown, Massachusetts.
Oh,
and
that's too bad.
And we, it had been a podiatrist's office or something. So all the little rooms we turned into bedrooms. Okay. And
the table that's way up on the top of the stirrups.
Well, they had taken all that stuff out. Oh, but and we used to rehearse there too. But the whole he was just if he hadn't been a rock star for 25 years, he could have been sleeping on the couch,
Right.
you know, and you know, so I felt it was kind of like a dream come true in a way, because when I remember when they first started, it was like 1973, Monty Python and Ziggy Stardust.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
and he actually was that, you know, he was and
That's amazing.
and he was friends with all the Python guys. So it was
No, ask me what's impressive in the entire world. That's fucking impressive.
right. So we ended up we ended up just being friends, and I would bring him books and I'd come out to see him. And then at the end of the tour, he was trying to get Sarah, my ex, to continue on to Australia. And she had to go back to her real job, because what she did was she used her vacation time so that she could go work for David.
Wow.
And she gave him a tape that I had given to, I was, my closest brush with you know, like the rock star world was I auditioned for Daryl Hall for his solo tour that got canceled, so that and Peter Wolf's band at one point. So I had a tape that I had used for that. So she gave that to David, and he called up about 3 months later, and he was like, "Why the fuck didn't you tell me?" And I said, "All right, who the fuck is this?" And he next thing, that was like on a Monday, and Friday I was at his house in Switzerland.
Okay, so based on that, I have a question. I'm a video game nerd.
Let me just tie this up now.
Oh no, tie it up, please.
So all that stuff made me unflappable in the studio with David, and all that followed, whether it was dealing with the personalities of the Sales Brothers, or being the band leader and musical director, even though I hate that title, for the birthday show and all that stuff. And it was just like, it was no different than the scale of it was the only thing. It was like being in a local, you know, you're dealing with press when you're in a local band, if you're lucky, and you're dealing with people that don't like you, with music critics that don't like you, and music critics that love you. If you're lucky. And you're dealing with other bands on the bill, and you're dealing with your own band members, and you're dealing with writing music, and you're dealing with going to studio. And I was playing sessions, and I was playing on Bean commercials, and doing all this stuff. So I was, and actually, like, the blessing of it and the curse, though I never used the word blessing, but I just did. That implies some sort of belief in
Let's not go
a
there,
deity.
no.
But
this is blasphemy, not, you know.
Right.
Blasphemy.
So I was 30 when I started working with David. So if I'd been 20, I wouldn't have known what the fuck to do. You know, but those 10 years of really, like, you know, you got to wake up on a couple of kitchen floors and wonder how you got there to be able to go through life.
Yeah. Before Andy jumps into his question, because I know where he's going with this. David has just left his persona, his brand. Like you're saying, he had your mixtape. 1988, you guys start to collaborate, and it's been well documented, so we don't have to go into it. You kind of grounded him in a resurgence of being rock and roll and artistic, yada yada yada. Was there a little pressure off of doing Tin Machine because it's like something different, and it wasn't?
You mean for him?
I'm saying for you, because I mean you're jumping into
Well, it was funny because it was, to me, it was, I had never, even though I lived around the corner from around the corner from CBGB's from late 76 to September of 78, which was prime for the whole punk rock thing. That's when I was taking lessons from Schofield and you know, I wasn't, I mean, the original bass player and drummer that David and I talked about for the whatever it was we were doing before it became Tin Machine was Percy Jones from Brand X, who you might or may not know, and Terry Bozzio.
Wow. Okay.
And
I don't know who Terry is, but
Percy Jones was sort of like he was post Jocko, and he played on a bunch of he played on Eno stuff, and kind of like Mick Karn was too. I mean, they were all
awesome.
But so my point is, when the Sales Brothers got involved, it was, this is sort of like, well, I'm not watching The Puppy. This is sort of like you never want to act with a child or a dog.
No,
you know?
I'm sorry, my puppy needed my attention.
It doesn't bother me at all. But I mean, I just made me think of the W.C. Fields quote.
Never work with children or animals. Yeah, right.
Anyone who hates kids and dogs can't be all bad. Is the quote.
Get away from me, kid! You bother me.
Anyway, so the thing was when the Sales Brothers came in, I had to kind of readjust because I'd never played with a band that, until I got in the room with them, I thought of them as really primitive, like really punk rock 3-chord. Yeah. And in fact, there was a wealth of old school R&B, and old school blues, and whether it was Shuggie Otis or it was John Lee Hooker or it was early Temptations or the Four Tops. I'm trying to remember the singer's name in the Four Tops. I'm blanking on it right now.
My internet's
I'll blurt
not
it
that
out.
fast. Yeah,
but it was so they were, and in fact there was a cusp in New York on the East Coast when like the Young Rascals and the bands that came from that were like they were really snotty white R&B players.
Really?
Which is almost like an aspect of
fucking white appropriation,
like the later David Johansen post-punk, Funky But Chic, that song, or Frenchette, or anything off of that first Johansen record. Which I can see you glazing over a little bit on that.
It's just that we have so many questions. We have such limited time.
Levi Stubbs. That's
see. There you go. So I'm taking control of the pirate ship for a second because I'm a nerd, and Omicron for the PC. You and David worked on the soundtrack for that, and I hadn't listened to it in a long 20 years, at least, because I had it for the PC, and I went back and listened to it on YouTube and stuff. And I have always wanted to do a video game soundtrack. What are the differences of doing a video game soundtrack than doing like a physical release where it's like, oh, here's the new David Bowie album, and it's Reeves Gabrels is writing it, and blah 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 blah. This is like, okay, so this is a video game. This is like 3 or 4 layers deep underneath the graphics, underneath all the marketing and bullshit. Is your soundtrack? Mm-hmm. How different is that than like having this like surface level craziness?
Right.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like. Well, it's be like scoring a film to some degree. I mean, you've got theme. I mean, I'm very, my arranging background from music school and all that comes into play, and I think about a basic set of like maybe 3 themes, and then reharmonizing them so that what was a major theme can show up as a minor theme, or a, you put it in, I mean, I always think modes are taught wrong, not to turn this into like a music theory lesson, but when they teach you modes, they teach you that they're each based on each step of a major scale. Right. When in fact it's more interesting, maybe a little harder to go, okay, this is a C major scale, this is a C Phrygian scale, and if you're just playing them all against a C bass note, you can really hear the difference. But if you think, okay, this is a C major scale, an Ionian mode, and then this is what is it? The E Phrygian. It's not gonna work. You're not going to hear it. You're just going to hear something that sounds like you're playing in C, but landing on E as your note of resolution, which is the third of the C chord.
This is the thing is you can talk about it, and then when you hear something like that, it totally makes sense. You're able to speak about it, you're able to describe it, but then at the same time you're able to hear it.
And Jeff that just chimed in is a saxophone player. That's why he said bring on the music theory.
Right.
So anyway, the thing is I had that in my, and the other thing is, before I started doing the video game stuff, I had already scored a couple of films for PBS, or a couple of series. So I had that, and I had taken film scoring in music school.
Is that now? And I'm going to just steal it for one more second, because the whole cyberpunk thing, the cyberpunk soundtrack, I attribute to you, especially you, but like you and David Bowie, like on Earthling, and then the stuff you did on Nomad, and it was just, to me, that's what the 1995 through 1999, and this big old culmination in the Matrix is like, oh, let's have an orgasm with the Matrix, and then it's all over. Even after that, like the sequels, nobody gave a shit beyond that. But like before that, when you guys were doing stuff, everybody was like, dude, this is what the internet sounds like when you plug a headphone jack into it. This is exactly.
And I did another one. I did one called Deus Ex.
I fucking love.
After that, I did we wrote songs that were some of the songs. A lot of the songs ended up on. Well, it's tough to say. I can't really recall exactly whether when we did the Hours record, which was after Earthling, whether those songs went. There were different versions that went to that soundtrack for Omicron.
There were two tracks that came off of and went on Hours. They were the Hours remixes. I totally like studied up on it because I wanted to experience it again. As Zach and I said earlier, as Ward and I said, we were able to go back through stuff like Earthling's gravital for me.
Oh, same here
for me and for Zach, because you've got, number one, I want that fucking coat, but like number two, you brought in a different genre of music when you had all of this stuff going on with like the Prodigy and with Basement Jacks and blah 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 blah. You just throw all these different things out.
Hold a second, because when we're talking about music history from our eyes, which is in the 40-year-old genre of people, especially with Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails is huge for us. I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite bands.
But seriously, like looking at David Bowie and
but Bowie, you guys did Earthling, I have after the fact, I've gone back to the other two albums that happened after Tin Machine with David Bowie that you were involved in, of course. But Earthling was the one that's like that just swooped in and just like.
It totally reset everything. It brought everything to the next digital phase.
We had just come off the road from what started out as the Outside tour with Nine Inch Nails, and then we went on our own through the next summer. We started in September 95, and also in September 95 I put out my first solo record, which I did because David said he wanted to start his own label, and he said, "Why don't you get a record together? You're always playing me stuff, and then you never do anything with it."
Is this the solo record that Dave Grohl and?
No, that's the next record.
That's the next one. Okay, okay.
But this one was called "The Sacred Squall of Now," and
Right.
And David's on 2 tracks. Gary Oldman sings on 2 tracks.
Fuck yes.
Jeffrey Gaines sings on a track, and then I do the rest of the vocals.
I didn't have that one. Okay.
But yeah, it's the first one was on Rounder. Anyway, so I was opening some of those shows with 9 Inch Nails, which was like being with the trio. So it was like being a mouse in front of a bulldozer between. but I was playing with my band, and then playing the last couple of songs with 9 Inch Nails, and then we would transition into the Bowie set. So it kept me out of trouble pretty much.
What a fucking tour!
I was playing like all night long. But the thing was, the funny thing was, I got Pretty Hate Machine on the end of the second Tin Machine tour, and I would play it on the bus. That and Soundgarden, Bad Motorfinger.
Oh yeah,
I bought them both in Amsterdam, and I remember this. And Soundgarden that went down okay, but Pretty Hate Machine would clear out the back lounge. Sales Brothers and David couldn't stand it.
Is that like somebody bringing mindless self-indulgence into the room?
I don't
kind of dropping them.
I don't know, but when I went over to start working on stuff for the Outside record, David said, "Hey, have you heard 9 Inch Nails? You got to hear this.
Listen to this crap."
And it was the Downward Spiral.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Don't you remember I played this for you?" You know.
Pretty Hate Machine.
And he turned me on to like the drum and bass stuff and Photech and things like that. And I would like to think I turned him on to the more industrial stuff.
That's a good marriage. It's a great marriage.
Actually, there was a conversation that I had with Tim Palmer when we were mixing. It was him and I mixing the second Tin Machine record at Pete Townsend's studio, Eel Pie. And I was trying to get the guitars to be like, where's the camera? Like this, like dry and like almost so much there that they're inside your head.
Dry your eyes.
And I didn't know how to explain it. And at that point I hadn't heard 9 Inch Nails. And then
which mastered that technique, the whole dry eyes thing. That was they dry eye to you. Oh man.
So it was a kind of funny time, but it was. And then when we went in to do Earthling, we had just come off the road. I'd gone home for 2 weeks, and David said, "Why don't we just go in the studio?" And I had been writing. I had an Apple C290, maybe it was, and it had a little screen the computer was the same size.
Oh my God.
But the screen was only like 4 by 5 inches. It was like looking at an old Philips television. And I had Vision software and one of those QXY, whatever, Yamaha sound modules. And you had to put everything in stepwise. So I would sit on flights, on planes with headphones on, just going, beep, beep. Yeah.
Hang on, it takes a while. It's fine.
But 6 of those songs ended up on Earthling.
Really?
Yeah. That is insane.
Seriously, I listened to it. Like Zach and I listened to it earlier today. We literally were talking about it. We're like, dude, I'm listening to Earthling. I'm like, totally, me too. It's because it's important. And
my hair's looking like Rudolph Schenker.
Let's give Andy. Let's give a quick shout out to Susan, who's handling all your social media right now. Reeves.
I could hear her cackling downstairs.
I know.
I was going to say Udo Kier.
I think she's.
I'll go with that. I'd like that.
That's good. See,
I think Susan is the workaholic in this. All of us right now.
Yes.
So let's get last question with David, and thank you for talking about it, because sometimes we've known you, we know the history of everything, and we certainly there's so
we know
much
you
to
before we
explore.
know you now.
Yeah, so much to explore, and we appreciate your input
Well,
on this.
I'm way chattier than usual because I've been in the house for 2 months, and
Yes.
and Susan is officially tired of talking to me or listening to me. So I basically it's me and the cats, and they don't answer either. So
Yeah.
Susan, it was 1999.
Everybody in the chat is saying hello to Susan, so that's very kind. It's been a number of years since I've seen her, so we do miss her. So to wrap this portion up before we jump into some Cure stuff, of course you were.
Oh, that's right, the present. I forgot about the present.
Let's go.
Yeah. So you've mentioned in this podcast your favorite title is musical director. So you were the musical director for the David Bowie 50th birthday concert, which I'm 42 was a monster huge deal for us at home in Ohio and abroad. How did that celebration even come about? Like where did this come from?
I mean, basically, David just said to me while we were finishing up the Earthling record, he goes, I'm going to have a birthday party for my 50th, and I'm going to invite a bunch of people to play. And I was like, all right. And I just kind of let it go for a couple of days. And he goes, I'm going to have my birthday at Madison Square Garden. And I was like, yeah, all right. That, sure.
Whatever.
Of course you are. And I mean, I believed him. It wasn't that I was doubting. It just was like, well, when David says he's going to have his birthday at Madison Square Garden, what's the surprise in that? And I mean, the weird thing was there were a couple of people that were said they wanted to come or were going to come and then weren't coming. And it was like
Drama. Yep.
Courtney Love and Madonna, I think, which neither one, which
no big loss in my opinion.
I've never really considered either one a major musical force myself, but I'm just a rock guy. So,
maybe drinking buddies. I don't know.
So so there were a couple of things about it that was really cool. Like Lou was invited, Lou Reed, and
Awesome.
Lou had a reputation for being difficult and cantankerous, and one of my all-time favorite records is Rock and Roll Animal, and then the outtake record, Lou Reed Live. I mean, Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner, right? And they were fucking poets, those guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing with Lou was I being the band leader, musical director. The thing about being a musical director is you talk to them about it. I mean, you talk to management and say, yes, I'm that. You agree on how much extra it's going to cost, and then you say, never call me the musical director. And that's
Point one. Never call me this name, damn
unless we're going to Las Vegas.
Right.
So anyway, so Lou, I had to teach Lou the songs he was going to do, which was like Queen Bitch and White Light, White Heat, which is one of his songs. And we did Dirty Boulevard with him, but I had to run through them, just him and I. And Lou was like, didn't know me from a hole in the ground at that point. And David was. We were at where we were working on some mixes, and we did a lot of recording at Looking Glass Studios, which was Philip Glass's studio. Mm-hmm. And it was a fairly small studio, but David and Mark Plotty, who co-produced and engineered with us, were on one side of the glass, and I was in the live room with Lou. And I had gotten the chord sheets, the lyric sheets, and I put the chords over. I think there was one more song of David's, and I can't remember what it was. But I'd written the chords over the words because I didn't know. I used to do that occasionally with Tony Sales because they weren't music readers, but they would, you know, because we covered April in Paris with Tin Machine one night. And so, you know, that's a fairly complicated set of chord changes, and I didn't know how to explain it other than to put the chords over the lyrics. So anyway, I did that with Lou. And we're playing Queen Bitch, and he kept blowing this one chord, and we ran it twice, and I said, Lou, what's up with that chord? And he goes, well, what's an O chord? And I said, no, an O chord. And he points at the paper and he goes, yeah, that one right there. And I said, oh, that's a D. And he goes, well, that's not a very strong spine. And I took my Sharpie and I went, and I said, how's the spine? How's the spine now, Lou? And we talked some more, and he was a little, anybody that ever met Lou or worked with, or spent any time with Lou, if they had an ongoing relationship, it was because they passed through the filter. If they didn't make it through the filter, he just didn't deal with, you know, they weren't part of his world.
There are people that are like that, where you have to make it beyond the garden wall in order to like get to be in there. Yeah, totally.
And then he and then at the end of it, so he warmed to me, and you know, he farted while we were working, and I said something like, you could have done that after we were done. He was kind of hanging around the hallway a little bit, and I'd come out to the studio to get a cup of coffee, go back in, he was there, and I came out again to use the bathroom, and he was there, and I said, what's up? And he goes, well, my car's not here yet. He had a car service that was going to take him home. And I said, well, maybe we should change it to waiting for my car instead of waiting, you know. Instead of waiting for, and he just lost it. He thought that was the funniest thing. And then the
all about the delivery.
When I saw him at sound check and at run through, we were talking some more, and he had these guitars. They were I think the name was Mirage, maybe, but they had a headstock that had the tuners on the outside, but it was looked like a tuning fork, or like the old Black. No, I remember Black Bolt, Black Bolt superhero character.
They had this, and there was a 3x3 on either side.
And Black Bolt had like a tuning fork on his forehead.
Oh,
it always made me think of that. But he was very excited to show me those guitars, and at one point he said he gave me his phone number, and he said, and it was like your weird uncle, you know. And now I'm that guy now. Ah, boy.
He was like that guy eventually.
He was like, you know, if you ever need anything, you know, you get in trouble or you need bail,
need somebody whacked.
I'm gonna fucking whack a guy.
He goes, I don't sleep that much, so just you know, you can call me anytime.
All right. So, last bit about this.
I got something though that I didn't answer. I remember a question I didn't answer.
Okay. Hit it.
Which was why Parker's, Steinberger's, and not the big two?
Thank you.
Legacy.
And it's
this is how you get people to stick around. This is clickbait stuff. I like that.
This is the reason is, you know, I had a Telecaster. I sold it. I bought a Les Paul, put new pickups in the Les Paul. I bought this was back when you could buy a Strat used on 48th Street for like $175. And I bought a Strat, stripped it, 73 Strat with the bullet thing. And then I had a Les Paul Jr. And that was great for a while. But when you finally get to the point where you get to become yourself, I think you have to let go of, I mean, I love Leslie West. I don't think I really sound like Leslie West, but there's elements of Leslie West in there, and there's elements of Clapton and Beck and Adrian Belew and Alan Holdsworth, and you know, it's all this stuff it's gone into the thing, and over time it becomes less identifiable, which is what an artist does,
Right.
and or should do, I think. And the other side of it is so many people hear with their eyes, that if I was to come out playing a Les Paul custom with David, people would think of Fripp or they would think of Ronson. If I was to play a Strat, they would have thought of Adrian,
Right.
or Ricky Gardner, or
So
even Carlos at some point played a Strat.
A different facet of your artistry is the instrument in which you choose to play.
Well, you develop at some point, you start to search for your own sound, and then you also think about
identity.
I mean, if you played in front of people enough, and read enough reviews, unfortunately, which is a really sort of the parasitic thing on the body music, I think. But I saw your face. But you have to evolve your thing so it's fully formed, right. And also, on the sheerly technical side, you start to realize what works for you. And the modded Stratocaster pre Van Halen,
right?
Because I'm old enough that I'm the same age as Eddie, or I'm a year younger than Eddie, I think. But I was already out playing when Van Halen came out, and I saw them on their first tour, opening for, who was it? Journey, I think.
Journey, yeah.
And I remember thinking, if I was Richie Blackmore, I'd be really pissed off at this kid.
Yeah.
Because at that point he hadn't heard Holdsworth yet, so he wasn't doing the sort of speed up, slow down whammy bar thing, and so I was miking my Strat, I was modding my Strat with. Well, there weren't locking tuners yet. I had one of the earliest sets of Spurzels, because I happened to run into Bob Spurzel when I was working for Fishman at the NAMM show they held in New Orleans. And he's another guy. He would call up, when I was working for Fishman after that, he would call up to talk to Larry, and he'd get me on the phone. He'd go, "You all right? Do you need any cash or anything? You doing okay, kid?" But which is a tradition. I mean, we all have to pass that along. But the point being, the guitars.
Let me ask you guitars real quick. It was a bold move to go to the Steinbergers, because it was so far removed from anything at that time. We're talking 80s. To me, it looked like they were trying to take the regular design of a guitar and just modernizing it to the 100th degree. So what made you gravitate towards the no headstock, limited blueprint?
I was working in a music store, and we had Paul Reed Smiths and Steinbergers. They were all high up and in glass cases.
Okay.
And we had a Rick Turner guitar, like the one that what's his name from Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, yeah.
And
the Booty Tootie.
And I remember giving Paul Reed Smith a hard time that he was still making guitars out of wood.
Okay.
Nice.
And I was able to get a loan through the store, so I could buy the Steinberger for $1,600. Right. Okay. But I liked it because I had gotten to the point where I didn't like what the rock and roll image thing had become.
Right.
And I didn't like, and then, oddly enough, when we were mixing the first Tin Machine record, Guns N' Roses had come along. And here we are. The most radical thing in rock and roll is a guy with long curly hair, no shirt, playing a Les Paul slung low. Wow, I've never seen that before in rock and roll. And he, which is
you forgot the bitchin' top hat.
Well, it sounds like I'm picking on him, and I don't really mean it that way. I just mean it's like not it was what was put on him more than what it was.
Right.
And plus he revitalized the Les Paul industry.
He really did a really good job. Good for him.
Yes, he did.
And I didn't really do much for, I didn't really help out Steinberger all that much. The thing of it is I was gravitated to that instrument because it had no history really at that point, and it had a killer tremolo, and they sounded great. Those carbon graphite guitars were so consonant with EMGs. The whole thing made sense together.
81, 82s.
Yep. And it was just, I just fell for it, and it pissed people off when they saw it. And
there's something to be said for soul, and there's something to be said for accuracy at the same time. You can have soul in an old wooden instrument, and then you can have this pinpoint assassin-like accuracy in something that is new, is something that is graphite, is something that's got
to dovetail what you're saying, Andy, and we usually try not to make it, but the one thing about you, Reeves, is that when I was selling guitars in the late 1900s, for all you whippersnappers out there,
back in the last century,
we sold Parker, and you in the Parker guitars. I
remember that fly.
Yeah, you were the guy. Like when someone said, "Well, what is this?" Like I was saying your name in the 1900s and talking about you because you were the champion for And the Parker Fly in if you take the guitar in general, it is a marvel of an instrument for the time when it came out.
Well, the Stein, I mean, I also viewed it as phases, but the thing about soul and accuracy is to make the assumption that the soul is in the instrument is an error. I think, though a lot of people do that. I mean, there's a certain smear you get from a wraparound bridge. That little bit of sitaring that the wraparound bridge does gives it a thing. And juniors and wraparound bridges to this day are my favorite thing. But it's character, right? It's not necessarily the actual soul. And if you have something that does accurate reproduction of the intention of the player, then it shows the player for what they are. And it'll show the player's soul or lack thereof. And that's the way I looked at those instruments.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm Zoroasteristic enough that what?
I don't. No, please.
That's where you imbue spirit to inanimate objects, basically. And
so that's not like what do you call it? Not polymorphization, anthropomorphizing.
Onanism.
Are we playing Scrabble here?
Damn, we are. I think.
But anyway, the thing is, then Parker's came along, and I knew Ken because Ken brought up his 6-string bass that he'd made for Anthony Jackson in 1985.
Ooh, okay.
Brought it up to Ken. Ken brought it up to Larry Fishman in Boston from New York. Ken used to work on 48th Street, and he also shared a space at one time in Brooklyn with Harvey Citron, Ned Steinberger, and who else? There's another guy I'm blanking on. Might have been Sir.
Maybe. Oh, really? Really?
But they so. And they were aware of Fishman's pioneering work with piezoelectric crystals at that time because nobody had done that yet. And Anthony Jackson wanted a piezo bridge on his electric bass. And it looked kind of like the regular Parkers, but a little more Klingon warship-ish. Okay. And so it's a Sunday, and Larry Fishman calls me up and says, "You got to come over here."
This shit's so Klingon warship.
And we were working in the basement of his house, and he had a deal with Guild and was just starting to get something going with Martin at that point. And so I went over, and there's Ken and Larry, and there's this thing, and I started playing it. And at that moment in time, I almost made this transition to becoming a bass player because the thing was so fucking cool. So I knew anyway. I knew, and Ken used to give me prototypes to see if I could break them. That was what he said. Take this for a week and see if you can break it. And originally they didn't have a tremolo, and then I helped them. I did some of the they were trying to figure out what pickups to put in it. I was the guy that they called to come over to. I had already quit working at Fishman at that point, but I was still welcome.
You were quality assurance.
I was just happy idiot, really. But
crash test dummy.
Yeah, that's actually what it.
So let's.
He had asthma, He has asthma. That's
really.
Yeah, which is
so
not
the amount of depth he's able to get.
That's why I bring it up. There's nothing wrong. He's still perfectly healthy, and
does he have 3 testicles?
Yes, but in a jar.
Okay, how do you even cough with that one at the doctor's? So let's transition here into the Cure. We have a lot of Cure fans.
Yeah, we have a lot of Cure fans,
and they're majority of your questions, like 92% of them, maybe more, are not going to be covered here because we are way over limit with time.
We may have to do.
I told you the answers would be longer.
Well,
no, that's
can we ask? Can we like get a preliminary contract for a sequel to this? Because I think there's a lot more ground we need to cover.
Yeah.
Cool.
Reeves, can you just say the answer is maybe?
What?
Every question that was asked about the Cure, the answer is maybe.
Well, you asked me a couple of them. I got time.
Okay, so let's dive into a little bit of this. Now, look at that Reverend guitar, by the way. Oh,
yeah.
In case you're just joining, we 3 here with Reeves are involved with Reverend guitars. So if you're wondering why are these nobodies having such a melodic conversation with a guitar icon, it's because we work with Reverend, and we are very appreciative. And this embarks 10 years from when I met Reeves about 10 years ago. So don't be too jelly, but let's jump into a few things.
Seriously, I got.
And before we go,
yes,
Zach Green is
the silent one.
I mean, Zach. Well, yeah, but the guitar. I mean, I don't do anything to the guitars when I get them, except now that we go 9 to 46 on them, or when they're coming to me. That's what you.
No,
the only thing I do is I raise the bridge pickup a little bit. That's. I mean, because I know I put it closer than most people would want it.
He's fucking memorizing that shit right now. You can see it.
Well, even the ones that aren't Sustainiacs, because I remember you gave me that note about what you do on a Sustainiac, and I've been setting every Sustainiac to your bridge measurements.
Are they still working?
Oh yeah, beautifully. I'm actually working. I just started 4 today.
There you go.
Yeah, we don't talk about work per se on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the Reeves Gabrels Sustainiac's popularity has hindered my business because it slows things down. Because Zach actually installs all of them. They're hand done by him.
And I love it.
I know. Green, he would much rather do anything that has to do with installing or fixing or retrofitting.
He's bringing it. He's
got
it right there.
What Ward would want
This
you to do
dude's
is
got
this. Take something off the shelf, put it here. Take something off the shelf, put it here. Take
Look
something
at
off the
this.
shelf, put it here.
So,
I can't hear a word you're saying.
that's fine. So,
It's okay. It's all good.
So let's screw it. Let's talk a little guitars here because we usually don't talk about work. So, Green, can you tell Reeves and everybody that's listening?
But what about the Cure questions?
Do you want to do?
There's going to be a lot of upset people if you don't answer those questions.
Let's do the Cure questions on this show.
No,
let's save the guitar
Andy,
stuff.
Simmer down. Hold on. Just let's look at Zach Green. He hasn't said too
No,
much yet.
I don't mind, man. I enjoyed the stories.
Yeah.
I don't need to talk.
Green, talk about the Sustainiac guitar. It's one of our most popular models. Screw it.
You know what's funny about that? You know how many years I argued with Ken?
Many.
I love Ken, as you know, but part of the thing I love about him is arguing with him. about things, but he really didn't want to put a sustainer in the guitar.
Well, it wasn't so much that. It was just like a third party, another company that we had to deal with. And on the manufacturing side too, there's so many like obstacles that we have. And a lot of it is outside. Like we can run efficiently in-house in Reverend guitars, but when you start introducing Fishman pickups and Sustainiacs and stuff like that, it starts to complicate things a little bit. But I'm actually super happy that we did it. Green, can you give us a really quick 2-minute?
Go to the basement and show us how to install a Sustainiac.
No. What goes into the love of this guitar?
Just
that ultimately goes to his
well, there's some routing that needs to be done, and since I do so many of them now, that I had to make a jig on an old pin router, just because if not, I mean, you're just gonna start hand routing everything, and you're just gonna be, hours and hours go by. So I from one of the old pin routers from the phenolic days, at Reverend, the Formica guitars, I made a jig, and I learned from the best of them, Joe Naylor, and how to make jigs to do production runs. And I didn't think I was be able to do it because it's kind of complicated because it's like the mirror image of what you're actually routing. But I figured it out. It works like a champ, and I'm able to route out bodies like within like minutes. But the challenging part of the whole operation comes in the wiring, because there's a lot of wiring, and the wiring has to be just right because certain wires can't be next to other wires. And
the orange one, is it the orange one and the green one?
Yes. And they have to be a certain length. They can't be long, because if they're a certain length too much, it doesn't work. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah,
is it impedance?
I did a thing. No, it's a weird. I don't. It's voodoo. But I had opened up the pickguard on. I'd taken the pickguard up for some reason on one, and I put it back. And when I put it back, I was hearing this, but with the volume off and the amp off, but the guitar plugged in, which turns the sustainer on. And so I put my hands on the strings, so they're fully muted, and I'm still hearing really super high, like maybe an octave above that, like dog. If I'd had a dog, it would have been freaking out. But it was because those two wires were too close together, and it was just acoustical crosstalk.
Wow.
Or something.
A perpendicular crosstalk.
And I called up what's his name at Maniac Music. The guy that came up with it, and I'm blanking on his name now, and I shouldn't.
It's the best website on the internet.
Yeah, right. And and it's like Dr. Bronner's soap. If you've ever read the label on Dr. Bronner's soap, but he said, take a look at the green and orange wire and make sure they're not too close together. And if they are, separate them as far as you can. So what I did was I found them. They were right next to each other. I separated them and it went away. And I took a packing peanut and sliced it and put it over the edge of the circuit board and put them around the packing peanut on the outside and crazy glued them. So they were super glued, so they would never move. And it's that green one. No, it's not. It's the Tabby. It's the one I use with the Cure all the time. That's the black one with and then I put a kill switch on it as well.
All right.
A fucking champion of reduce, reuse, recycle, Reeves Gabrels, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's the deal, folks. We have only a few Cure questions prepared tonight, just because we have been friends with Reeves for a long time, and the Cure seems to be like a separate thing to a certain degree for us in the love of Reeves Gabrels. So if you do have a question, our producer Danielle's in the chat of both Facebook and YouTube. Ask your question. I cannot guarantee at all that it's going to be asked, but maybe you'll have a good one. Who knows? Andy, why don't you do your Cure question first so that we can...
I just want to know
Actually, you know what? Hold on. I feels good to shut you up for a second.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Oh, I thought he was talking to me.
No. Reeves, before Andy does his question, which I love your question, by the way.
Fuck you.
Reeves, can you just, because someone actually asked, I'm going to try to, can I find this? How did this process begin for you to jump into The Cure? I think it was it Lollapalooza or something along those lines, wasn't it?
I met Robert at David's birthday show.
Right. Okay.
And then we ended up at the after show trying to steal the after show party was held at Julian Schnabel's workspace, and it attached to his house, and there were paintings and stuff there. And Robert and I tried to walk out with one of the paintings, and I said, "No, we'll just tell the security guy at the door that Julian gave it to us."
No, it's fine. It's fine. Keep walking. Keep walking.
And he just looked at us and went, "No, go hang it back up." But we realized that we had some kind of bond there, and then at the end of the '97 tour, the Earthling tour. Last night we were in Budapest, and it was an end of tour party, and I get a phone call. I'd gone back to my room for a second, and it's Robert, and he's like, "Look, we know you're in Budapest," and Mark Plotty was producing the Wrong Number single for them, and I had hooked Mark up with actually Robert said, "We're working on a recording. Who would you recommend?" And Mark was there at the after show party, and I just said, "This guy." And that was all I knew about it. Next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call, and they're in the studio in London. So they said, "Why can you come to London you're going to have to change planes in London anyway, coming back from Budapest before you go to New York. So why don't you come to London and stay for a couple of days and go into studio and work on this track," which was being put on like a greatest hits compilation.
Lord.
But it was, yeah.
That's you were actually, you segued my question. You made me look amazing right there,
Let's
Reeves.
go.
Thank you very much. My whole thing was about the actual song Wrong Number, because that is, to me, because I was really into The Cure when I was younger. My sister, when I was a very young person, introduced me to The Cure, and then I had a girlfriend that was into The Cure, and then Wrong Number came out, and I was like, this sounds completely different than anything I've ever heard The Cure do. And it got me going on this down this rabbit hole in the 90s, which was not as easy on the internet as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And looking all of this stuff up, and then realizing that not long from there, or not far from there, there was a David Bowie album that I listened to regularly, and this was the guitar player that played on that album. This wasn't just like an easy, you could just YouTube it and find all your shit done. This was my first research project on a guitar player.
Yeah. Andy's the youngest out of all of us, by the way.
Not by much. I'm 40. Whatever.
So your question is...
I've got socks older than that.
I just want to know what the process on that track was. So, like, you're talking about it, they just dumped you into the process. Or did Robert have like a...
Yeah, the vocal was there was at least a guide vocal, and bass, drums, keyboards were all done, to my memory, they were pretty much pretty much done, or at least fully sketched out. And Robert's rhythm guitar track was down. The chords that sound sort of like, a couple of the chords are reminiscent to my ear of The Pusher by Steppenwolf. That anyway, and so he just said, I don't know, maybe something, but he goes, I'm hearing like a more American guitar thing, so maybe like a riff that's somewhere between like Ronson and ZZ Top. And that was the end of it. And I did a bunch of noise things. There's some stuff that sounds like scratching on there, but it's actually guitar. And
there's a line towards the end of it that is repeated. Seriously, that defines the song for me. I remember listening to that constantly, getting into everything, and realizing that you were the dude that helped with Earthling, and then you were the guy that did Omicron thing. So like,
Yeah.
I'm a fucking nerd for you. Thank you very much.
But the thing that happened with that is I did a bunch of guitars on it. I mean, a lot of guitar tracks, and they kind of sifted through them. And then we did another thing called 36,000 Feet that I don't know if that ever saw the light of day on anything. But and then Robert we did a song called Sign from God for the South Park, or Kogasm, the South Park guys. And that was, Robert called it Kogasm because it was me, him, and Jason Cooper from The Cure.
Oh, no.
And then,
that's a happenstance name like you wouldn't believe.
And then I got Jason in to play drums on the original version of the Hours record, the Bowie record.
Okay.
And he's on, I believe his drums are on the the Omicron versions of the songs, but not on the final record. And then we did, Robert and I wrote a song a couple of months later called Yesterday's Gone, which is on my Ulysses record, my second solo record, that came out at the same time as Blood Flowers, and people thought it was a Cure song because we got a fair amount of airplay with it, but people thought it was from the Cure album because Robert's voice is Robert. Robert.
He is what the Cure sounds like. That's what the Cure sounds like. Yes.
And so it was and then we stayed in touch through the years. I'd go and see them play. I moved to LA. I saw them there a couple times. And the other thing was Robert and I figured out that night in the studio, and also after the birthday show, that we also would stay up for several days at a time.
Best drug ever.
I've never heard that term before used, but I think everybody can figure that portion out. Hey, let's Cure Fan Documentary has a YouTube, Facebook, whatever. They have a question for you. We have to give it up to them. Jupiter Crash. Is there some
an analysis
insight? Yeah.
It was written before I was in the band, and I've played it, and it has to do with
help break down the guitar beauty.
It was well, we've only played it a few times. I'm playing the 6-string bass part when we do it, and I play the little 6-string bass solo.
Six.
Yeah, bass 6 that's on the record, and which sometimes I use the bass 6 that Robert gave me. Sometimes I use the bass 6 that Reverend made for me, which is a one-off.
The bass gun.
Yeah, the 6 gun.
Oh yeah,
I remember. I know. I remember taking pictures of it. Bass gun, baby.
That guitar plays so well that it's almost plays too well.
It should be in jail.
For stuff where you want bass 6, it's great. If you like, for the imaginary friends, it works out great because I can play it as comfortably, and the tremolo works great on it. That's a spectacular instrument.
All right, so I actually remember making that one for you.
There you go.
On kind of this, vein, preparing for major tours, what was the difference between a David Bowie tour and a Cure tour in preparation wise
for you?
Well, for David's tours, we never had more than say 26 songs rehearsed, and we played like an hour, 40 minutes max. And it was pretty well laid out, and the parts were, some of the parts were specific, but there was a lot of wiggle room there, and a lot of room to change stuff every night in that music. And we would also, the thing is, later on we were working with backing tracks for sequential stuff and for percussion, and that locked us into a form.
Right.
which you spend your whole life supporting the singer, and then you end up, when the singer fucks up and you've got backing tracks, you got to hang them out to dry, and which is kind of fun a little bit, but also frustrating. And early on, I would follow the singer, but a tour with the Cure we rehearse like a band, we would be at SIR rehearsing with David. And then we would do production rehearsals with lights and everything. With the Cure, we will do everything in a room that's like any other band in rehearsal, pretty much. I mean, we tend to have a lot of equipment, but we can't even set up the way we do on stage.
Right.
And it's a real workshop kind of situation where we're just working on the stuff, and the lighting guys will have a room upstairs in this rehearsal space that we use, and the sound guys are in the room next door. The front of house doing getting a feel for whatever material might be new. And the other thing is the Cure will play. We played as long as like 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
And on average we probably play close to 3. And 2016 we had we rehearsed 118 songs, I think it was. We played we played 98 of them that year. And in 2019 we had like more. We had, I think, Roger and I figured out, the keyboard player and I figured out that it was like 128 songs. And
you're filling arenas with these people that are expecting to hear their C-side song, not their A or B side. They want to hear the fucking.
They're gonna hear it.
They don't want Killing an Arab or anything like that.
The other side of it is with the Cure, which is something that never happened with David. Is we play 3 nights at the Universal Amphitheater, or was it Universal Amphitheater? Hollywood Bowl, and they wanted us to do 5. Or we'll play 3 nights at Madison Square Garden, and they want us to do more, but we'd have to blow out the cities that were coming up next. Like, sorry, you can't play in Baltimore. We're going to stay another night in New York.
You need to schedule this shit ahead of time.
Because they really need, the ones that couldn't make it the first 3 nights, want to come the 4th night.
But that's so good. That's so awesome.
So the point is, when you do 3 nights in New York City or 3 nights in LA, you can't play the same set every night.
Right.
Or we don't feel we can.
You can play a whole catalog in a 5-night.
Yeah. Well, not the Cure catalog, but and then the other thing is there's a new Cure album waiting to come out. So
awesome.
There's going to be more songs.
We have a question for that from I'll say, I'll find his name here in a second. When we were pervious to the internet's a beautiful thing, and all of a sudden, a little while ago, like the first Cure performances on TV started to surface, where Robert looks like he's in like 6th grade or maybe junior high. He just looks so young.
Yes, his hair was very erect.
What part of the Cure, prior to all this business, when you ended up being a part of the camp, what part of the Cure intrigued you, and what intrigued you about the Cure before the 90s?
Why'd you want to do what you're doing?
Well, I actually, for everything I just said, I never really answered your question. Okay. So Robert and I met in 95. He's on my records. I played on some of their stuff. And then he called me up in April of I was going to England in August or June of 2012. And I said, why don't we get together and write a song? And he wrote back to me. He goes, when are you coming over? And he goes, what are you doing this summer? And then then it became that. And then I played with them. The first show we did was at Pink Pop. It wasn't Lollapalooza. It was Pink Pop for 70,000 people.
Okay.
And then it just went from there. And I was really just going to do the summer. I thought. I wasn't sure. And then about 5 shows in, they asked me if I wanted to join the band. I thought they were going to fire me, actually.
Oh, dude, I remember.
Because I was just a hired guy at that point. you know, and they weren't used. They never had somebody who wasn't in the band. And I, you know, they sat me down the back of the bus, and I thought they were going to
let you go.
Let me go. And in fact, it was the opposite. But anyway, that was the answer to your question. Now, what was the new question?
Well, the Nashville thing about being like a good hang.
No. The new question is, what did you enjoy, or what really?
What was it about the Cure
before the 90s?
Well, you know, it's funny is all through the 80s in Boston, they were just like, they were everywhere. You know, any club that I did a gig at between sets, between the band before us and our band, you'd be hearing the Cure in between while you were setting your gear up. They were just always around. And I think the first Cure record I actually bought was, though I certainly listened to them much, was Head on the Door.
Okay.
And that's some of my favorite Cure stuff on that. And I've obviously gone way deep, and we've gone all the way back to, you know, 1978 in the shows. Wow. So I mean, what I did was in 2012 and 2013. Well, 2012, I didn't listen to anything but Cure music for 6 months, because I knew once they asked me to be a part of it,
it'd be so sad.
I had to catch up, or try to catch up to where everybody else was, because I was like, you know, I was out running around with Bowie, or running, you know, or going on, you know, I did a couple of tours with Paul Rodgers, you know, I had my own bands. I did all, so I was, you know, I was like a bee going from flower to flower. But suddenly there was this gigantic, you know, sunflower that was my new home, and I needed to catch up. And the only way I could do, the only thing I listened to was Hendrix playing All Along the Watchtower at Isle of Wight. because Robert said, I was asking him about like what my parameters were. Everything's defined by the limitations you put on it, and I have a tendency to go too far. So I was asking Robert, how do you hear what's going to happen in here? Like, can you give me an example so I know what you're thinking, or what's going to move you to sing what you want to sing? And he said Hendrix at Isle of Wight. Wow. And All Along the Watchtower. So that was the one exception that year, or that between May or April, late April of 2012 to October of 2012.
That's unbelievable.
And you know, the thing of it is too, I mean, what I try to do is, because I've done a lot of gigs where I barely knew the people, or I was suddenly on front of 30,000 people playing these songs for the first time, you know, and I'm not talking about the Cure, I'm talking about other things before the Cure, because it would have been more people than 30,000 with the Cure. But the
humble brag.
Well, yeah, you know how you get from Madison Square Garden to Carnegie Hall? Oh, sell fewer records. That's a horrible joke, but
damn,
this is your right spot for that.
Yeah. Anyway,
you did really kill.
The thing of it is they. I don't think. I mean, there's always with some of. Robert's never had a reactive guitar player that would try to help him.
Right.
You know, or not that he needs help, but that, you know, the thing I learned with David, and I've learned from being a singer myself with the Imaginary Friends, is that it's nice to feel like you're being supported or cradled.
Yep. And
I can disrupt it at any time. Creating disruption and trouble is not a problem for me. But it was important to me that the band know that I was there for the band and not there for my penis, you know? and that's something I've worked at for years, but that I actually, when I started playing with those guys, that was like everything you learn brings you to the point you're at.
Right.
And
Correct.
I really had an opportunity with them to find my way to kind of seep into the cracks without being obvious, and to make the structure a little stronger, maybe, and maybe a little funkier sometimes. Yep. But still not damage what the band is and what the band sounds like. I wasn't trying to put my shit on top of their shit. I was trying to become part of their thing.
Yep.
And
Party of the ingredients.
And I hope I've succeeded in doing that. But that was actually the more than having a favorite song, because one of the problems with bands is people have favorite songs and they don't want to play other songs. And
Right.
my thing is, and in some cases, from what I understand, in sometimes people that don't like the other songs will play them poorly so they don't get played again.
I've never done that before.
I've never done that either, but
Not at all.
But from what I've heard, that has been known to happen.
No, it's a horrible practice.
What a cross to bear.
It was just it. So I just really wanted to. I was at a point in my life when I started playing with them that I wanted to be in a band, and I hadn't really been in a band in a really long time, unless it was one I made myself.
But you could do worse for the band that asked you to join them.
So it's been like one of the true joys, like of my, I hate the word career, and I wouldn't. But of the arc of my guitar playing experience, it's definitely, that's just a fantastic way. No, that's a fantastic way to put it.
We have never had an intermission, so let's just get a few questions out of the way, and we're going to call this because we've been blessed with this, and
blast.
We've
been blessed.
Yeah, this could go on forever.
He said blessed.
And maybe it will. I didn't know. It's a simple blast. So Mike Jordan asked a question, and he's the winner of the questions right now. What reverends do you play on the new record?
The Space Hawk was the Space Hawk Reverend guitar, the semi-acoustic or a semi-hollow or whatever you want to call it, but doesn't have F-holes. Mm-hmm. That guitar, I kind of had it. Everything about that guitar was done for the Cure. The Cure isn't a fulcrum tremolo or a Strat kind of tremolo band. In my mind, it's a Bigsby band, and
B50.
and that. And all of everything from the kill switch to the
segmented pick guard.
The segmented pick guard was funny because I basically wanted something that was going to hang with the Reverend catalog.
Mm-hmm. So that was the first time we've ever done that. That was
in my mind, I just took the Sensei shape and made it 335 size.
Right.
Was what I was trying to do, and then. Joe Naylor said, "Oh, we can make we can make the top so it's not what's the word? Zach, help me on this. Where doesn't have a cutout for the arm, but it's
contour.
Contour. How you say in English, contour.
Contour. Give me contour.
And the fact that it's semi hollow. Is a definite Cure thing, and I wanted it to look like if you saw Vic Flick playing on a John Barry session for a James Bond movie in 1966, and there was a black and white photo, and he had that guitar, you wouldn't think it looked out of place. That was my idea.
Nice.
So it has a little and
fit right in with the whole aesthetic that Reverend goes for.
And Joe came up with the segmented pickguard. We were trying to figure out how to deal with the pickguard, and the other side of it was I always hated the bayonet and the Warhawk and the 6-gun.
It's very warlike.
I tend to think of guitars as having a feminine personality, and not a weapon. And so Space Hawk was sort of my little twist of the nipple, as it were, to like. And so I play that guitar, and I used my the RG, which is with the sustainer in it.
Yeah.
And what else? Oh,
we have to say Jeff's comment, the soft touch spring, which you developed.
Yeah.
Well, I destroyed a Custom Shop 335. I didn't destroy it. I just damaged its resale value by moving a Bigsby around.
You pulled it
on
off the parking lot
because I had a definite space where I wanted to get certain notes off the tremolo, off the springs behind the bridge, because there's a lot of that in Cure music. There's a lot of playing behind the nut and playing behind, and I wanted to know what the notes were, so I could actually, like, if I needed to put it in E flat, I just push the bar down a little bit and use my other hand to play behind them. I mean, it's how far up your own ass do you want to travel? But that's that's what
have guitar will travel.
That is the question.
All right, we're gonna go quickly through the last section here. We've got still a really good number of people that are listening, and we just want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we want to thank Reeves, and I hope that some of the questions that we did cover satisfy your needs without making some kind of negative meme. Or
we're doing drywall with Reeves Gabrels.
So
I used to be a taper.
Oh, and really? I don't know what that means in certain circles. So before we do that, let's talk about a little bit of your own solo project.
Top of my head gone.
Yeah, and
look at that soft touch spring.
We call that.
The soft touch spring. Yeah. So the soft touch spring just came about from me going through as many springs as I could find, by the way. And I found one, and it was the only one like it that I knew of, and I sent it to Joe, insured FedEx.
Joe Naylor from Reverend, just in case anybody's questioning, yes.
And the
Joe actually squeezed an antenna from a 1963 Ford Falcon into the shape of the soft touch spring. And then that's all he does is he goes to various junkyards, and he knows exactly the intensity to spring these things.
Actually, the thing about the spring is it's long but soft, which is normally not
once again, Joe Naylor goes to the junkyard. I love you, Joe.
It's the John Holmes story.
More like the Bobbitt story we're talking about. So let's really quickly, for everybody that's
everything's
listening,
been really quick.
Yeah, because I mean, hey, listen, this is
It's only been 2 hours.
I know, right? Thank you for devoting.
All right, we have to do at least 7 minutes with the outro, just for record's sake.
Are we going to sing?
Everybody.
Now.
Well, no. So here's a link if you are visually seeing this. Reeves Gabrels at bandcamp.com.
It's the new record store, Bandcamp. It's not like that CD Baby horse shit.
It can be that too. Who knows?
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Oh, thanks, Willy Wonka. So
come with me.
Reeves.
That's too. You guys are too young for me on that one.
Oh, I could do a little Candyman or
World of Pure Imagination.
Little Sammy Davis.
Sammy Davis Hagar.
This. Come on, Andy.
Wow.
This this, Reeves Gabrels and his imaginary friends.
Fisher Price Waterhouse.
Get on your bad motor walker and ride.
Has some of my favorite moments with Reeves, the guys and the imaginary friends. Andy specifically said he wanted to give a shout out to the imaginary friends who are.
That would be Kevin Hornback and Jeff. What's the last name?
Jeff Brown and Mark Pisapia,
the other drummer.
We've done gigs with two drummers.
We
have singing drummer and not singing drummer.
Right.
Well, Andy and I've spent so much time with those guys and enjoy them so much. And
good dudes.
They're probably.
I've spent time with them too.
Just a little bit.
In prisons, practically.
So last section, this is where I'm going to see all the eyeballs are just going to go crazy with your bank account's going to start filling up here with.
We do not hear a
Bandcamp
say that's going to actually happen, but
it's a Bandcamp spike. Is other than the stuff that you have out for purchase, which is amazing. Do you have anything in the Imaginary Friends also in the works?
There's stuff that's. I've got about 12 songs that are not finished yet. That once I get the lyrics sorted, and refine the vocal melodies a little bit. Actually, Jeff has played on a couple, and we also there's a version of Teddy Pendergrass's song "Love TKO" that we have done live, but it's when we do it, it's about 12 minutes long. But we recorded that. We recorded that with Mark Pisapia on drums and backing vocals, and Jeff on percussion.
Okay.
And Kevin Hornback on bass. And
what a dude.
And with Roger Nichols co-producing. And we did. There's a live album too that came out 2 years ago, I guess, or last year. That was recorded back when I had a really long beard and I was shaving my head. And
you were a wizard
and
guitar wizard.
That was the year of the dirt bike, by the way.
Yes,
the year of the dirt
there's
bike.
a picture of me on. There's a picture of me on a Schwinn.
I have a video of it, by the way.
Riding the bicycle.
Yeah.
Oh God. 20-inch frame with a 225 6-foot tall man with a long white beard.
That's a horrible rap lyric.
Give or take.
Yeah. But what, the beard?
Yeah.
But that record is only available as a download.
Okay.
And it's really good. It was recorded without us knowing we were being recorded, and it was recorded by Jamie Rubin at the Family Wash, which was our old haunt in Nashville. And I think it's one of the best things I've ever done as a guitar player and a singer, I think. And it's definitely the best representation of what we sound like live.
Okay.
Awesome.
And why did I go down that little infomercial road?
No,
because that's important, because the sound live is what you want to convey to the audience. And if you're able to capture that on an album, fan-fucking-tastic.
We just sold one on
what did I
Bandcamp.
saying?
You're welcome. You are welcome from Simple Blasphemy.
Jesus Christ, dividends.
In
Dividends.
order. In right order.
Hey, Reeves, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You still got that guitar that I ran over with my car?
Yes. Yes. Oh, and that's on the that makes an appearance on the new record too.
Awesome.
That's
the one. That's the one that I took the picture of against the pallets, against the wood pallets. Yeah, totally. Awesome.
I had a fun time putting that together.
Do you know what's so interesting about that guitar? All you people that don't care, is that we had in Reverend, we had a shipment of guitars on a truck that fell into a ditch, and
a ravine,
filled with water
in like Indiana or Illinois or something. And
we said Illinois.
we were scrambling, like we are literally out of product, and we need to sell, get the guitars out the thing. So we finally got this shipment of guitars in, and maybe only 3, and I actually have one of them that you can't see because I have a green screen. There's one of 3 behind
green screen
that were truly messed up out of all the guitars that we had. They had the green screen. And Ken comes in, he's like, well, these guitars are pretty fucked up. Green, I want you to make this one for Reeves, but relic the shit out of the fucking thing.
It's already half relic. Let's go.
And this is supposed to be a surprise. And Green we went into the driveway in Livonia, Michigan, and Green was running it over with this car back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and a number of different things. And I think we sent it up to Collar City, I think, to be presented.
It was at a place. It was a dealer.
Collar City.
Yeah, it would have been Collar City. It was been Peter's place. Yeah. Peter Fisher, Collar City Guitars, Troy, New York.
I think that Collar City is a better name than calling it Peter's place. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, Collar City is the whole Collar is the one of the things besides being the supposed birthplace of the Uncle Sam character there was the Arrow Shirt Factory, I think, and they invented the snap-on collar because back in the day, back in the 1800s, you wouldn't have time to wash your shirt and you wouldn't be able to bathe as much. So you just put a clean collar on,
like a dickie.
Well, not exactly.
My guitar player,
maybe yours,
used to play. Well, you just snap on my dickie and we're good to go. My guitar player and singer only does a collar and tie. That was his shtick until he gained weight. I don't think he wants to do it anymore.
All right, folks. We
Tuck
would like
and roll.
Right.
We would like to thank Reeves so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Reeves. It was awesome, man.
We were scheduled for 45 minutes.
Enjoyed listening to the stories.
Everybody
I got a
else,
million of them. They're all in my book.
You should. That's it for us, folks. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you again. Woo!